Hello and welcome to another video, and today it is the 26th of August, and I do apologize for not uploading anything yesterday. I did record a pretty long video yesterday to go over all the strikes that occurred and just go into very deep detail as to what occurred, but I had a lot of connection issues yesterday with my internet, and that just ruined everything, and I can't do the summary of the 25th justice in this video. So I'm just going to cover the most important points as I go on throughout this video, but I'm not going to go into the amount of detail that I did in my recorded video, which just failed to upload. But anyway, let's get into this. There was some news that I need to talk about. So first of all, I did update this map yesterday to show that Russia is pushing forward towards these two towns over here, which again are key to securing this road. And you need to secure this road by taking this town over here, Shiroke, and of course these other two towns. And then if you want to advance towards the west, the other town that needs to be captured is Bilozirka over here. And let's say Bilozirka was taken, this would really put the Ukrainian agglomeration in this area in a precarious position because they would be enveloped from three sides. They would be fighting like this, and they'd have to fall back to this other line like this, just to stabilize the front line. So there is the possibility that Russia pursues this option and then pushes in towards Mykolaiv, of course. There were a lot of stuff that happened around the Antonovsky Bridge that occurred over the past few days. So, the most notable was that yesterday Ukraine struck the bridge with HIMARS, and apparently most, if not all of them, were intercepted by Russian air defenses. And the proof of this was shown when there were videos recorded of trucks passing through the bridge over here uninterrupted. And meanwhile, Russia is constructing a pontoon bridge, and they're about halfway done with it now. So this is just to sort of supplement the Antonovsky Bridge in case it gets damaged again or even destroyed. They'll have a backup bridge to use to transport supplies, and that's a pretty good strategy. Anyway, the bridge around the Novakakovka Dam was also damaged by Ukrainian strikes, and there was a video of it that I saw early in the 25th, and I counted about 4 craters which went through the pavement and the metal grids, but it did no damage to the underlying structure of the bridge, so it is still possible to use this to transfer supplies, but again, there needs to be repairs over here. In addition to this, the Ukrainians, they claim to have launched this strike on a military hub in this town over here called Dudchani. And Dudchani, apparently it's like a logistical and communications hub for the 98th Guards Airborne Division. So what Ukraine is saying is that they killed 20 Russian troops in that strike and destroyed 2 armored vehicles. There was no video from this area though. And yesterday we saw some very heavy shelling of Kryvyi by MLRS systems, specifically the Tornado MLRS, and it was very extensive. It occurred throughout the entire day, and it's at a magnitude that we haven't really seen before. Same thing with Mykolaiv. There were some heavy airstrikes and shelling of the city, and it happened so many times that I can't even count how many times there were air raid sirens going off in this oblast. It was just going on non-stop the entire day, and we barely have any videos of what occurred here but I am sure that there was extensive damage. But Ukraine does a pretty good job at hiding the full extent of the damage. Although the Russian Ministry of Defense did report on some of the ammo depots and command centers and fuel storage facilities that were destroyed, and I did talk about that in the video I recorded yesterday. Um, it was in all these isolated towns around Mykolaiv, but not in the city itself. Although there were strikes in Mykolaiv itself last night, which were recorded on video. But again, I don't know the targets for that either, unfortunately. So let's move on now to the situation around Zaporizhzhia, because that is one of the more pertinent issues at the moment. So what occurred here is that originally the NASA firm's database showed all these bushfires around here. You see there's like this long bush line over here, and there were fires raging over here, and they probably spread towards the power lines and dangerously close to the nuclear reactors around here. Something like a mile, 2 miles, a mile and a half away, which is almost nothing. So the pumping station was damaged, and all 6 of the units over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, were disconnected from the Ukrainian power grid and the energy systems. So the Zaporizhzhia power plant, it makes up about like 20% of Ukraine's total energy production. So that is a huge loss. Although I will say that it has been working at a limited capacity for a while now. So the problems were already unfolding before this shutdown occurred, but this just exacerbates the problem. So there were 4 power lines in the Zaporizhzhia power plant, and 3 of them were already shut down, and now the last one was actually shut down due to damages. And this caused a temporary blackout in the Zaporizhzhia region, including the Russian-controlled areas and also in the Kherson region as well. But the engineers were able to restore power, and the plant did still receive some electricity from one backup line that was connected to a nearby thermal power plant. And usually there are 3 backup lines, but 2 of the backup lines were destroyed by the shelling. So that was another issue for the engineers, although they did stabilize the situation. Now, the head of the company that operates the power plant, Enur Goatam, he said that Russian engineers, they planned to disconnect the Zaporizhzhia power plant from the Ukrainian grid, and that they wanted to integrate it into the Russian grid. And this was followed by like strong condemnation from the Western countries, and the IAEA. They've been trying to pressure Russia into visiting the power plant, and it seems as if they are discussing the situation now, and Russia might give the IAEA permission to look through the plant and inspect it for themselves. So the problem with what occurred is the employees in this power plant, they activated the diesel generators, and these are supposed to be the backups in case of a shutdown, because you know the nuclear reactors, they can overheat, that could cause a major disaster in the area. So the point in activating the diesel generators is to give power to the cooling pumps, and those cooling pumps, they prevent the overheating of the reactors. So luckily the employees were able to do this without much of an issue. But the thing is, these diesel generators are unreliable for long periods of times, so you can't just rely on these diesel generators for days or weeks. The power plant really does need to be activated again, at least some of the generators, because if the diesel generators can't sustain the cooling pumps, then yeah, there's a good chance that not a major nuclear disaster like Chernobyl, but there is still a possibility that it would affect um, the neighboring region of Zaporizhzhia and Kherson, maybe even Dnipro, maybe like a 30-kilometer radius, something like this. Um, anyway, there was some news that occurred pretty recently, a few days ago, in this town over here called Mikhailivka, and the military civilian administration is in charge of this town and of most of the towns in the regions under Russian control. So the guy who is in charge of this town is called Ivan Sushko, and he was killed in a car bomb attack a few days ago. And just today, another sort of attack on the Russian administration was carried out right before I started recording this video, and it was in Berdyansk over here. So the deputy head of the Directorate for Traffic Safety in the city over here was also killed by a bomb. So it is a pretty common pattern for such events to occur, and it is also similar to the death of Daria Dugina. Anyway, let's move on to the Zaporizhzhia front line, where we have news from here. So, in Orikhiv, there was a massive shelling campaign throughout the past 24 hours, and apparently an ammo depot was destroyed in the area, and Ukraine did release some photos of houses that were damaged by the shelling. The same thing with Huliaipoli over here. And there were also reported ground assaults towards Huliaipoli, although I did not see any sort of gains manifest from that attack. It might have just been a probing operation just to destroy Ukrainian positions. And there's also talks about fighting around Kamyanske. And the thing is, the fact that Russia has this control of this bulge over here around Shcherbaki, which is disputed by Ukraine, Ukraine does say that they control this area, so maybe the Russians don't actually control it. But let's say they do control it. They're in a pretty good position to attack, first of all, Kamyanske from here, and they can attack Orikhiv from the east. So this is a pretty good position for them, and they could sort of stabilize the front line around like this in the future if they attempted such an assault. Now, a very interesting thing that has occurred over the past 2 days or so is that Ukraine has sort of shifted their strategy in the Vuhledar-Avdiivka area. Basically, their strategy is now to launch limited counterattacks in front lines that have remained static for a while, just to put pressure on the DPR forces. And we saw an example of this in the Vuhledar area, where there was an attempted counterattack by Ukrainian troops, and they failed. There was fighting in the open fields areas, in the trenches, and they lost about 2 platoons worth of men in that assault, and were just forced to push back. And people are calling this like a kamikaze-esque sort of attack, because overrunning the Russian positions is pretty difficult, and it only comes at the expense of the Ukrainian soldiers that are forced to launch these ground assaults. Although, yeah, I did stall the Russian operations in this area, because we have seen no gains by Russia in the Vuhledar and Pavlivka sector in a while. Same thing can be said about Novomikhailivka and also Marinka. Although, we did have some geolocations from Pisky that I want to talk about. So first of all, the DPR, they released videos of tank fire in this area, and this is the position of the Russian tank, which is geolocated. And the target in that tank fire was geolocated to this area. And it was probably hiding behind these hedgerows, which is the new Ukrainian strategy in this area, because you don't want to stay in the open fields, because you're easily just going to be eviscerated by the Russian artillery. So hiding in these concealed positions in the hedgerows is the best strategy. And clearly it is slowing down the Russian advance to a certain extent, although it's not game-changing, because you can easily overrun chains of bushes and trees. But I would say that there's like one row of hedgerows left before Russia actually reaches Novelskaya itself. Every day or so, they inch closer and closer, but the gains are so minimal that I don't even map it anymore. I just have it left as this front line, and once there's fighting around Novelskaya, I'll just change the map accordingly to indicate that. In the Pesky area, the DPR or Russian forces, I'm not sure, they released a video of them hoisting the victory flag, which was hoisted over the Reichstag following the Battle of Berlin. And it was supposed to be like a propaganda video. But the thing is, the video was geolocated to pretty deep into Pesky, where the fighting wasn't even that contentious in here. So I would say that it's not confirmation of anything. There was a video of Russia shelling the plant breeding station, and they were using drones to attack the Ukrainian positions around here, which does prove that Ukraine is still present in the plant breeding station area. Although I will say that there won't be any plant breeding in this area anytime soon. So I do have to change my map to indicate this. And again, nothing really in the Avdiivka area. The front line is really stalled around here. As a result, I'll just move on to the more pertinent news around the Bakhmut sector, because there was some news from there. So we know that Wagner does have a foothold in these eastern parts of Patrice Lumumba Street, in these houses over here, these facilities, and then yeah, you have the residential blocks and this whatever this pond is doing over here. It's not a lot, but it is just one foothold that can be used to penetrate deeper in later on. So basically, what Ukraine did was they launched a counterattack to reclaim this line around here on the E40 highway, and at first they were sort of successful pushing them back about a kilometer or so, but the Russians, they were able to push them back to the original front line, and this was mainly done by the Wagner PMCs. So again, there's no real changes to the front line around here. It is still static, and that's also why Wagner wasn't able to push forward anymore, because they were dealing with the counterattack from Ukraine. Anyway, you have news from Solidar of ammo depots being struck over here, and similar news was announced in the Bakhmut area, where there was an ammo depot destroyed, and in Pereizhne. There were so many of these Russian statements about destroying ammo depots and command posts, especially along the Donetsk front, that I can't even get into it now. I did get into it in the other video though, which sucks. But one notable one that I'll talk about is in the it's in this town called Yasno-Brodivka. I'm pretty sure it's around here. If it's not, then I apologize. But the Russians, they filmed a video of basically shelling the town around here, and they did show that there was a strike on the 56th Motorized Infantry Brigade around here on their command post that was located in the area. So that's just one of many examples of Russian strikes that occurred yesterday, and they were very copious. These Russian strikes, they occurred throughout the entire day. The air raid sirens went off more than 189 times, and we didn't get that much video footage, but that's expected. You don't want to help the Russian PR by showing the full extent of the damage. Besides that, again, the front line is static around here. It's possible that Ukraine did attempt a counterattack, because there were talks that there was fighting in the remnants of the refractory plant, which is around here, and also in Zelev Soko Street over here. So it's possible that Ukraine did counterattack and pushed back the Russian forces, say, what, half a mile, something like that. But no real changes to my knowledge. Now, in Yakovlivka, there was a video of Ukraine striking Russian BMPs, and when I was looking at the geolocation, I was actually surprised because it was on this road over here, the the road between Berestove and Solidar, which is not really being used as a defensive line anymore. It might be in Bielohorivka and Yakovlivka, but you know the Russians have sort of pushed forward towards the road along Vimka. But yeah, Russia has reached this area, although they did suffer damage to 4 BMPs per the video, which I link over here. And that does show that they are about to infiltrate the town itself. And there was already fighting reported last night in the area. There was even talks of Russia having a foothold in the eastern part over here, like about a mile of control from the original positions, and then they can, assault from here and attack from the east of Yakovlivka, and then having control of Yakovlivka is a good thing for Russia because let's say they have control of this area over here. They can push towards this northern part of Solidar, which is about 6 miles away, 5 miles away, something like that. And it is a very heavily fortified area, and just having better flanking positions is important. Now, let's move on to the Seversk front, where Russia did release some videos of them fighting in the area around Ivano-Darivka. Although I wasn't able to find the exact location, I did try to look for a geolocation. I couldn't find one, unfortunately. If I do find one, I'll link it. But it might be difficult because the fighting was just in these open fields with some trees in the area, so it is difficult to pinpoint exactly where it was filmed. But that does sort of prove that there was fighting in this area. Now, in the area of Prihorivka, I had this under the control of the Russians originally, and I do still stand by that. Russia did probably control this area, but they were pushed back from their positions near Serebryanka, and now it's basically confirmed that they're back to their positions near Bielohorivka. They were not able to deal with the high ground which Ukraine had by controlling these mountainous terrain areas just to the west of Prihorivka. So it was just a better position for them to move back to Bielohorivka, where the elevation is much higher and it's better for shelling, and they can easily shell Prihorivka from there, which is why there was talk. I saw a Ukrainian post talking about how there was a civilian who died in shelling of Prihorivka. So clearly, Russia isn't in the town itself anymore. In the area of Dolina, there was a Russian video showing shelling, although I couldn't pinpoint exactly where the video was filmed. I assume it's probably around this axis over here, from this tree line to Bohorodichny. And there was an attempted assault on Dolina, clearly, but it did fail. There was no capture of Dolina. It is very heavily mined, so yeah, it's a difficult task to take over this town now. The Ukrainians reported an assault towards Nova Dmitrievka over here, so perhaps you can move the front line a bit to look like this, but it's not much of a sizable change, you know. Anyway, let's move on to the Kharkiv area, where there was news of some major strikes on Kharkiv itself, although the targets themselves we don't know, and we'll probably never know, but we did hear reports of heavy shelling, not just from there, but also from Derachi, heavy shelling of Derachi, heavy shelling of the suburb over here. I'll zoom in on it. Mala Danilivka, there was shelling of that suburb over here. There was shelling of Chuhuiv, of ammo depots in Chuhuiv, this town over here, which is pretty close to the front line, like, what, 10 miles, 9 miles? Um, there was also a destruction of an ammo depot in this town over here called Zmiev, and this is just scraping the bucket of what was targeted in this area because the shelling really went on for the entire day, not to mention the airstrikes that occurred. So there was some extensive damage around here. The Russian Air Force inflicted heavy damage on the AFU around here, and they also did in the Sumy area. And there was about 100 cases of shelling reported around the Sumy region throughout the entirety of the Russian border with Ukraine. Especially on the city Sumy itself, there were some videos from there. And Russia does have a sizable chunk of forces actually stationed around the border with Sumy and Chernihiv oblasts, although they're not doing much besides just cross-border shelling and mortar fire for now. Now, let's go on to the two strikes that are most important that occurred yesterday. The first one that I will talk about is the one that occurred around the Mirhorod Air Base, which is right over here. So, the Russians, they are reporting that one Su-27 and a Su-24 were destroyed in the strike, and that two Su-27s and one Su-24 were damaged by it. And they say that there were 30 AFU casualties. In addition to this, they say that they struck another airfield just south of the city Dnipro. So I will find that right now. It is right over here. So they say that there were an additional 3 aircraft destroyed in strikes on this airfield over here, right next to the Dnipro International Airport. Another important strike that occurred was actually a Ukrainian one, which targeted the Donbass Hotel, that's what it's called, in the LPR territory in Kadivka. And apparently this was a base being used by the LPR Russian forces in the area, at least according to Ukraine, and they say that there were 200 casualties from the Russian side. And I didn't see a video of the hotel, but there is a photo that I linked to over here. There was some extensive damage to it, probably HIMARS. It's like what, 25 miles from the front line. The last strike that I will mention today is the one that occurred on the Chaplino train station, and this is the exact location where the Iskander missile was fired. At least according to Rybar, this is their geolocation of it. So they do a great job with reporting on the war. So of course their geolocations are greatly appreciated. So I'm going to first say what Ukraine alleges. Ukraine alleges that Russia struck the train station and there were civilian passengers in the cars, and 4 train carts caught on fire, and as a result 25 people were killed and another 31 were injured, and 2 of the dead are children. Now the Russian side is saying that there were actually 200 Ukrainian reservists killed in the strike, but in the videos I don't see any reservists killed or any civilians killed. No videos have shown any dead bodies in the train station area, although we did see some photos of damage to the nearby houses around here, which is understandable. There could have been collateral damage. I'm not denying that. There were probably those 2 children, they probably died from the collateral damage from the airstrike on the train itself and these houses around here. But in the train station itself, there were no videos of dead bodies, which is pretty interesting. It was probably being censored, and there are several theories as to why. Russian sources are alleging that they're trying to hide the truth of what occurred over here, and they're saying that it's a legitimate military target, and this is sort of proven by the fact that in the video that was actually released, just showing the damage to the train carts themselves, there was in the right side of the video a lot of military equipment being stationed on the platform, and it was covered by tarpaulins, and it was like trucks or maybe howitzers, but clearly there was some military equipment stationed in the area, some freight that was being stationed that would be probably sent to the Donbass area. That's what Russia was alleging. They said that it would be shipped towards the Donbass front in this highlighted area of the it was probably shown in the video, and you can see the video here, by the way, if you're interested. So there's a good chance that it was a military target, and that the carts themselves, they were being used to transport not just the equipment but also the Ukrainian reservists to the front line, which is why not the military equipment was targeted but the train carts themselves. And the Russians, they're saying that this is proved by the fact that the strike was on this this outer side of the train station, not on the civilian train station, like in the center, because usually the trains, they pass through the middle of the tracks and not on this outer side. There are some trains that pass by with civilians throughout the day over here. Like you have trains going from Pokrovsk to Kirovograd, or from Pokrovsk to Lviv, and you also have some of the trains from Dnipro passing through this train station. So undoubtedly there are civilians that are that pass through this area throughout the day. But again, there's very scant evidence that they were the target in this attack, although there probably was collateral damage, which is of course a tragedy. Now that's it for today. Apologies again for no video yesterday, which is why this video is also longer than most of them are. And I'll see you later.